Welcome to All Villa, No Filler, a podcast all about Aston Villa. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews and analysis. This is the Midweek Social, and I'm joined today by Neil Dunworth of the excellent For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. Neil, welcome to All Villa, No Filler.
Hello, Frankie. Thanks very much for having me back on again. It's always great to talk to you.
It absolutely is good to chat to you as well, Neil. So since we last spoke in January, it feels like things just been, well, on the up and up at Villa under the man I call Professor Unai Emery. What do you think has most improved at Villa since our last chat 2 months ago?
That's a really good question. And it's something that I think a lot of people actually have, I've seen it out there on Twitter a good bit. And I think one of the biggest things is changed about Aston Villa is that people take us seriously again. That's been big. Because we were very much in this purgatorial kind of no man's land, whereby it was really only the only reason we were being talked about in the media was because of friends of friends or former players of Steven Gerrard were there to back him up. And you never want to be in a situation when the only reason that the media are talking about you is because they're trying to back up their pal. Whereas now what they're trying to do is, what I love about this as well is you're beginning to see it more and more often is the media are now trying to figure out Unai Emery. They're trying to figure out what he's doing at Aston Villa, why he's doing it, and how and we're not the sexiest team in the world, and that's absolutely fine by me. But we're getting results and we're climbing the table, and it's even more kind of pronounced to the fact that we're on Chelsea's coattails, but there's a huge gap between us and Crystal Palace. Whereas, prior to when we last spoke, or maybe even just before that, we were very much mired in the 16 to 18 battle there, at the very bottom of the table. So I think the biggest thing is respect, I think, has changed at Aston Villa, but also I suppose realistically on the field, what has changed is I think discipline of how we play the game has changed in a lot of aspects, and that has allowed us to become a bit more expensive in certain areas, but also to be able to close the close ranks when we need to in games. And I think that's something that Unai Emery wanted and has always wanted to instill in these players. But big thing I think is the respect, and we're beginning to be talked about as kind of an enigma within the league because we're not playing that beautiful style of. I think it's actually quite fine, but a lot of people you're either Pep Guardiola or you're Tony Pulis. That's kind of the way that's the way Twitter works. That's the way punditry works at the moment. But people are trying to figure out Unai Emery's style, and they're having a great time on the internet trying to figure that out. And I think that's nice. I think it's good to hear from and Villa fans. We're able to puff our chest out again. That's another thing. That's another great thing to be able to say.
For the first time in a long time, it's it's quite interesting with Villa. I think that because the Premier League is so competitive this year, it feels like every team is playing for something. It feels like Villa are the one team that are kind of like. I mean, even where we are, we're in 11th. We could still get to Europe. But it sort of feels like we're the one team that you maybe a lot, sort of the wider media, I guess, hasn't really taken much notice of just yet. So it sort of feels like what Emery's doing at Villa is Villa fans have definitely seen the improvement, but whether the rest of football is yet quite caught on that something is, it feels like something's happening at Villa. And there's something I said in the podcast we did the other day where I said, there's almost, in a way, it feels like Villa, it's not too different to where Newcastle were exactly a year ago. A new coach, positivity growing, a decent purchase or two, fans getting behind it. Now, I'm not saying we're going to end up in the same position Newcastle are right now. They've had an amazing season, really. But do you think I was overstating it when I said that? Or do you think that there is a real chance that Villa could be lining up to have a real go at the top, the more traditional top six next season?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think that Villa are lining up to have a go, and I think they should be one of the teams. And I think Newcastle should be one of the teams as well. They should be lining up to have a go. The one thing about Newcastle is that I suppose last year what they did with all that massive unbeaten run after not winning for so long when Eddie Howe came in, that was spectacular. That is probably something that you're not going to see that year on year. You're probably not even going to see that decade on decade. That was very, very special what they went on last season, culminating obviously, or it included, should I say, with the Saudi takeover and so on and so forth. But I think from the point of view that it will be a Newcastle Aston Villa kind of I'm very reluctant to call it mid-tier, but because there's, the top six may not be the top six anymore.
Mm.
What's going to happen at Spurs? I think Spurs are the real kind of there could be a big supernova at Spurs that could blow it wide open from the point of view of, the players are all. It seems like the club are going to back the players. They're going to get rid of Conte. What's going to happen there? I will think they will be fine from managerial point of view, no problem. But it's been very public that the fans don't want the board and that the board don't want the manager and that the manager doesn't want the players and nobody seems to want to
Yeah.
be married to anybody in that relationship there. And
Yeah.
it's really strange. So they're going to have clear house and they will come again. Like there's no fear on that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking specifically about next year. Will Chelsea more will they gel together for next year, so, and I know they're not in the top six at the moment. I know neither of those two teams are going to make the Champions League, it would seem, this season. But from the point of view of getting in the top six, I think the Aston Villa should look to go there. You don't bring in Unai Emery to want to solidify 10th or 11th. You don't do that.
Mm.
You don't allow Unai Emery to take a good look at the squad and then start talking about some of the big names we've been linked with.
Mm.
Now once again, the paper never refused ink. The links that we've had for those players could just be all hogwash,
Mm.
but you don't start the what I'm trying to say is that we've put a couple of pieces in place here to be able to be able to maneuver, I think. And when you've got Unai Emery and if you can solidify that team to be able to be a 1-0 merchant team, then you're always going to have a chance to finish in those European places. And all you have to do is look at our current trajectory under him. We're third or fourth, depending on what way you want to look at it and what way you want to, what table you want to look at. And that's very, very good form for this team because arguably, the players we have at our disposal and the shrunken nature of our squad that we have at the moment, we shouldn't be in that position.
Yeah.
So of being in that third, fourth position since Unai Emery's come in. So he's already doing a very, very decent job. And with reinforcements for the players that he wants, um, he would be looking to capitalize upon some of the other teams maybe having a down year next season. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, just to be honest, it's the most sort of elated I've felt about a manager's start at Aston Villa for such a long time.
Mm.
And I think his background as well, with the 4 Europa League trophies and generally finishing, high in the league with different teams, that, I don't know, it just gives you a lot of hope that there's actually a lot of substance to this, rather than, I don't know, in comparison to Gerrard last year when he had a decentish start and it all then just started to fall away and it got a bit exposed. But, if we're talking about improvement under Unai Emery, which players do you think have most improved under him?
There's another thing. There's been a lot of topics, conversation around this. Obviously, whether Douglas Luiz playing alongside Boubacar Kamara was the reason for his renaissance. Well, not you can't really say that someone's 24 is having a renaissance, but the fact that he's elevated his game, and then Boubacar Kamara goes out of the team, and we still see that Douglas Luiz steps up and becomes that crucial player within midfield. So certainly Douglas Luiz. I think Matty Cash. I think Matty Cash has been really good the last 3 games.
He
It
has,
might be
yeah.
too early to say that he's improved that much under Unai Emery, but Matty Cash isn't a bad player. He didn't become a bad player just because he went to the World Cup. But what's happened is he's had to force his way back into the team.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear Matty Cash talk, he seems like a guy who is very level-headed. He's certainly not a diva. He just seems like an everyday guy. And I think he relished that challenge. And he's back in the team now, and he's playing better than he has in a long time. But you could point to different areas of different people. Obviously, Ollie Watkins has had a real upturn in form. Tyrone
Mm.
Mings has been really, really good.
Yeah.
And Ezri Konsa and Mings, that partnership has become solid, solid, solid again. So, the biggest names I think would be Douglas Luiz, Ollie Watkins, and Matty Cash. But I think the fact that Unai Emery has come in, he's kind of raised or he's elevated a lot of other performers, such as maybe well, not maybe John McGinn has been much better under Unai Emery as well. And I think there's very few players that have regressed under him. So that's always a plus point and always a positive.
Yeah, it does feel like there's. I can't really think of anybody who's regressed under him, to be honest. But we recently beat Bournemouth 3-0.
Mhm.
Do you think that was the best performance so far under Unai Emery?
Um, I think it's probably been the most complete performance. Yeah, I
Mhm.
I, I I would think so. I think Man United, the very
Yeah,
first game he came in, that's probably always going to stand out. They're going to stand out for me as the best performance of the team because it was just a sledgehammer blow straight
yeah.
out of the blocks, and I loved that game. And I literally sat here, my jaw was on the floor, and Luke Dean pings one in from a free
Yeah.
kick, and like you're just going like, what's going on here? Villa are doing things that they never do. But a close second would be that Bournemouth game. But I think the thing that kind of got me the most with the Bournemouth game was, we've been screaming out for identity, we've been screaming out for structure under Steven Gerrard,
Mm,
and it takes time, obviously, for that to be instilled. But I got the feeling against Bournemouth that there was something there, that you could see it. You could palpably see it. You can see we've done
completely.
this. The way that we've attacked in certain areas against Bournemouth, we've done that in other games. So for me, an identity isn't a one-off good game or a one-off bad game or whatever the case may be. It's about, have I seen this move before?
Mm,
And is this team still not able to shut it down? Because Man City sometimes will beat you with very similar goals, and that's why teams at the top can be really annoying, is because they
mm.
can replicate successful maneuvers, successful moves, successful patterns of play. And I think we're beginning to see that now.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to see players in midfield shift off attackers as they're coming through. And the communication seems to be a lot better between our back four. So the Bournemouth game, like obviously the best performance I think was the Man United game, but obviously that was his first game. But the most complete performance and one that I've been most kind of most how would I say happy with, I think would have to be that Bournemouth game, because you could see all those little idiosyncrasies that we were crying out for under Steven Gerrard team. The confidence, the lack of confidence in midfield under that team was just criminal, and we're seeing these little things creep back in game by game now, and
Mm.
that's the real mark of an identity, I think.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I went to Selhurst Park early this season, and it's a game I always refer to when we lost 3-1 there. I think it was the third game of the season. And,
Mm.
I'd already given up hope on Gerrard after the Bournemouth loss. That's when I kind of all of my hope and optimism of preseason was just vanished in that one game. But seeing it in person, where I remember Mings and Conser were constantly playing the ball back and forth to each other, but there was no outball at all. It just never felt like there was any kind of structural pattern in which to progress the ball forward further up the
Yes.
pitch. Whereas now you see Contra and Mings pass the ball back and forth to each other quite a lot, but it feels like there's a method behind it, and it feels
Hmm.
like they're just being patient and they're waiting and they're just waiting for that opportunity for the opposition to eventually press them. A gap opens and there's a triangle, and more often than not, it feels like it's kind of on the left. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that's fair enough? Because I feel like it's when I'm watching Villa, and again, I went to the other Palace game at home recently, and I felt like a lot of Villa's attacking play came from Alex Moreno pushing forward.
Hmm.
Um, you know what?
Yeah.
What do you make of Alex Moreno? Do you think he's added like a really an important and dynamic to Villa?
Yes. And the reason that he's added the dynamic is that he's a ball carrier.
Mm,
We haven't had a ball carrier. Sorry, I suppose the only ball carrier in our team was Jacob Ramsey
yeah,
in the whole team, and that
yeah.
was all throughout all last year and this year as well. So far, and then Alex Moreno comes in. He's able to carry that ball up that left wing. Um, he's got a different addition, a tempo. He's not slow, but he's not like lightning fast. But it's
Mm,
the tempo change that he brings when he carries that ball up that left hand side. I think has been a godsend, because Luka Dean's an international fullback. I think he should have gone to the World Cup this year.
mhm.
Much and all, as sometimes I malign him for his defending, but he is very one paced. Within his transitions up that left wing, and he does some really good things in the attacking side. But Alex Moreno keeps teams guessing. He's not going to be the stand and deliver, have to cross it from deep, or wait for the ball to come to him, and then when the ball comes to him, he's going to ping it across. And Luka Dean does that really well, but it's predictable, and we
Yeah.
don't have big beanpole or a big known striker that gets his head on everything inside in the box. So
Yeah.
it's not really playing to our strengths, but Alex Moreno does because it keeps teams guessing because he can cross the ball in, like we saw. He's the cross that he gave in for Ollie Watkins' goal recently, or he can
Oh
take it
yeah,
to the
yeah.
byline and run in around a fullback and cut it back to the penalty area as well.
Mm.
So the diversity in his play is something that and you can see that Unai Emery likes that because he's now becoming that favoured left back. There was a time when we had an away left back and a
Yeah.
left back. It's now becoming Alex Moreno's to lose. I think at this stage because of the diversity in how he plays.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how far forward you see him, and almost like a left midfielder a lot of the time. And the sort of little triangles he works, I think sometimes, particularly with Jacob Ramsey, I've noticed. I think Ramsey likes playing with him. Ollie Watkins, Douglas Luiz, and then obviously Mings passing the ball to him. So I don't know. I just feel like on that left hand side, Villa have got probably attacking wise, we're very strong, but it also feels like defensively, that's maybe where you can actually get at us as well. Maybe because of the gaps that Moreno leaves as if he pushes forward. But when we watch Villa, we've talked a lot about the strengths, but against Bournemouth, there were one or two occasions where the high line got caught. Zielinski going through on goal, probably should have scored, or Ouattara in the first half, I thought outright against Moreno was creating one or two problems. Do you think there's any weaknesses with Villa at the moment? Is there anywhere in the pitch that if we come up against a very well organised side or one that studies us, that you might think that might be how they get at us and might be somewhere we need to improve over the summer?
Yes, I think there's an area that we can improve in, and I think it's what we do when we lose the ball in attack. Without singling out Leon Bailey, but the fact that the way he attacks is so disjointed from the rest of the team, and that's why he's in the team. I completely understand that he's in there to be a maverick. He's in there to offer something different. Like I said, Alex Moreno does down the left hand side. Leon Bailey is supposed to offer that with his pace, a different transition there. When we lose possession from Leon Bailey, sometimes we can be very open, and the reason for that is because he either attacks too quickly or goes puts the head down and kind of goes on his own furrow, and we're not set in midfield. Or when he loses it, he doesn't even get up to top speed, if that makes sense, and then he loses it around the halfway line. So without cascading him, I think we can get better in that area as to when we lose the ball, do we get set in midfield a small bit quicker? That's the one area I think that we can see, because you go back to the Leicester game, they picked us apart very easily with early balls, and the reason for that was because it kind of reminded me slightly of Spurs last season when Harry Kane just ate our lunch, and that was. But it was to a different degree, and the reason they were able to do that was because there was space in front of our two centre halves, so they would play the ball over them diagonally or whichever way they wanted to do. And if you've got players that can clog up that area in the middle of midfield, that's why they're there. That's why they're so sought after. A good defensive midfielder is so sought after. And we had Kamara in that game, and he didn't perform He didn't perform very well in that game at all. And it's probably was his worst game for Aston Villa so far. But if you've got open space in front of two centre halves and you can see spaces in behind them and you can see clear areas where you can just target that one defender, that's when the high line becomes an issue, because you can go over them diagonally or you can go in front of them to players to try and draw them out. And if you start staggering your two centre halves with a high line, then you're in massive trouble, because the offside trap is gone, and it blows the whole area wide open. So without I think that in that essence there, I suppose more coherent attack on both sides is probably an area that we're struggling in at the moment. We do some good things, and Leon Bailey did some really good things against Bournemouth as well. So I'm not singling him out. I just wanted to kind of show that if we lose the ball in specifically on that right hand side of the field, if our midfield isn't set, it can cause issues with our high line. And that's what I've tended to see, that any high line issues that we've had previously, even against Liverpool as well, when Darwin Núñez went out there and they were swapping Darwin Núñez and Salah out on the right hand side. It came from us losing the ball on the right hand side and being open there. Our centre halves had to shuffle across. Our centre midfields couldn't get into position to kind of shield that area, and then they had opportunity, clear passing lanes to be able to target one centre half over the other. And then it makes your centre halves look bad. So sometimes, you could look at it and you could say, oh, Tyrone Mings had an awful game today. Why? Because they were able to play the ball in behind him at will. But why were they able to play the ball in behind him at will? Because they could just literally ping balls over his head and get people in and around him because there was no one in front of him stopping those clear passing lanes. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other when we look at things like that. But I think that's one area where I would like to see us improve. And to be honest with you, it's an area that Unai Emery knows we need to improve. If you are to go on the strong rumor that Matteo Guendouzi was linked with us in the January window, that will go a long way to helping us in that area for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think there was something to that Guendouzi link. It just seems like you can just see him in that Villa team, I think. But with Leon Bailey, who you just mentioned, I mean, obviously one of the more frustrating members of the team, I guess, is a fair way of putting it. He can capable of moments of absolute world class ability, and then will do something that you just can't believe he's done as a professional footballer. Is it just an interesting player, really? What do you think the future is for him? And do you think that in his position, where Traore also now is a backup, do you think that's somewhere Villa might target this summer as somewhere we might spend a lot of money to get a new player?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. The whole striking department, forward playing department is where Villa are going to hopefully add one or two players. I think in this upcoming transfer window, I think at least one recognized striker will come in, which we need. We are very much at the mercy of Ollie Watkins staying fit at this moment in time.
Yeah, totally.
And unless Leon Bailey really steps up, one of the biggest things I think with Bailey, and look, once again, I don't want to go in two-footed on him because he's obviously a good player. I just think the league isn't for him. The more I'm looking at it, the more I think the league isn't a league that offers itself to his strengths. I think he goes to Spain, he looks better. I think he goes to Italy, he looks better. I think he goes, Germany sorted him because of the very rigid nature of the way that they defend in Germany, and plus you've got the haves and the have-nots in the German league playing with Leverkusen. With Kai Havertz, I think Havertz was with him there, and Patrick Schick and all those guys. They were occupying defenders while Leon Bailey was able to get up and down that right or that left wing as well. So it could be a case whereby the league doesn't suit him. But then again, we've seen him play well in games. I thought he was really good against Leeds this season. First half last week, I thought he was better. I still expect more from him. But the thing with him is that he expects more from himself too, and he seems to be in a situation whereby things aren't going to the level that he wants, and he's getting almost overly frustrated with himself with regards to it. So I feel sorry for him in a lot of aspects that way. I think that Unai Emery is like, unless you're going to get a decent return for him, I think you're probably best off to hold on to him and try and see if you can reclaim him. I don't know that the club like the club spent what 30 odd million on him, 32 million or whatever. Club aren't going to see that back. They might see half of it back. In the year's time, they'll probably still see half of it back. So I think Unai Emery will sit and look and maybe say, would another season of me working with him in the summer work? And I think that's probably where we will come down. He's very much a player that people are frustrated by at the moment, but there will obviously be competition in there. There'll be another winger, if not two. There'll definitely be a central striker brought in. If there's only one winger brought in, I think there might be two central strikers brought in to play that 4-2-2 kind of situation. But I think that it's an area we will be heavily active in. There was rumors that we were looking at Marcus Thuram, Moussa Dembele looked like it was something that was going to happen in January. We've been linked with Nicholas Jackson. We've been linked with guys like big beanpoles like Vedat Mariki as well from Mallorca. We've been linked with two, and once again, as I said, paper never refused ink, and they could all be bogus links, but it's an interesting area, and it's one where we've got absolutely no steer on where Unai Emery wants to go so far, and it's going to be really interesting because we're going to hear names, and some people will look at names and go, "What the hell are Villa doing being linked with this player? This isn't the 70 million pound player I was promised." That's going to happen.
Yeah,
but it's going to happen for a reason because Unai Emery's attacking play is very much system based, and look, let's see what it brings because Danjuma is in the Premier League at the moment, and I'm not quite sure I've even heard of him kicking a ball
I don't, yeah,
since he's come
I
in.
can't
So
remember him doing
I don't
it.
even know who he's with. Did he join Everton or Spurs? I
He
can't
went
remember
to
who he joined.
Spurs last minute, wasn't he?
It was Spurs, yeah, it was Spurs, and he's not played that much. So I think he's only played one game actually. I don't know is he injured or not,
Yeah.
but it's yeah, look, it's one of those things that Unai Emery is going to bring in players that he knows he can work with and can fit his style. It may not be the sexy names, it may not be who we were thinking of, but I'm willing to give a lot of players tries up there because as you see, Danny Ings playing up there who can obviously score goals, never in question. If he's not going to be the flavour of the month, or not going to be somebody that can do the work that's needed up there, Unai Emery is going to make the business decisions there. And I think there's other areas where the business decisions would be made, like
Mm.
maybe Luka Dean is a business decision in the summer. Um, but I think that Leon Bailey might be somebody that we might still continue to see into next season as well.
Yeah, I think Alex Moreno is a good example of a player that you'd say that's not the 30 million, 50 million player I was promised, yet
Yeah.
you can totally see what it is that Emery saw in him, considering the way he's been playing, particularly in, I would say, the last 5 or 6 games. So that's and 14 million in this day and age is a fairly decent shout, I would say. But one player Villa have been linked with, someone we both covered, is a Portuguese player, Sporting's Pedro Gonçalves. Now, it seems like this week is when the links have really hotted up. There's been reports of 80, 90 million pound release clauses, talk of 40, 50 million pounds. So we're spinning into, obviously, we don't know the exact veracity of those links, but
Mm.
is he a player that you could see at Villa and a player that you would be happy to see at Villa?
1,000,000%. And the reason being is because we spoke about we just spoke there, I suppose, about attacking in a certain way, and we're a team that look we're getting better at ball retention at the moment, but we're a team that needs to make things happen. There was a lot of time, like at the weekend, we made a lot of clear cut chances. Fantastic to see, and long may it continue. Because there was times like we were like a cat playing with a mouse there at times against Bournemouth. But there have been other games where we've had to be clinical with our one or two chances have been good chances, and Ollie Watkins has put one away or something along those lines. The thing about Gonçalves is that in this sporting team, um, he's not force fed. And this is what I love about him. This is what I love about him. He's not a force fed player. Like he's not somebody that the club look to get the ball to the whole time. They've got a really good midfield with Ugarte in there as well, and there's some really good players that they have. But what he is he's superbly economical. We spoke about Danny Ings a moment ago. Danny Ings shot the goal record over the last, I think it's 3 years is ridiculous. He barely shoots, but when he shoots, he scores. He doesn't waste chances like that. With this guy here as well, you see the same from midfield. I know a lot of people would point to his wonder goal against Arsenal from like 60 yards out, but he's very much a metronomic tempo player as well. He's going to pass that ball around. He's going to be able to win it in midfield. I'm torn between where he would play in this team, whether he would be pushed a small bit wider, considering he's a left-sided player. Um, in predominantly in the main, he's left, but he's allowed drift around that area behind the striker, and he does contribute within the defensive side of play as well. He's not solely kind of like an attacking player where you can leave him up top. He's a bit more Buendia in his industry when he gets
Yeah.
around the field. But the biggest thing for me is we lack creators at this moment. It sounds a bit silly because we're getting goals from everywhere, but we lack people who can make something out of nothing. This guy makes everything out of nothing, it seems. Like his goal creating actions, his shot creating actions, and like the amount of shots he takes in a game. He's just that firebrand that can come in and make teams stand up and take notice. He came in and he replaced Bruno Fernandes in the sporting team. And he basically took the league by storm. He's he's a former like what Wolves did, why Wolves didn't hold on to him or what they didn't see from him. He's obviously progressed since he's gone out to Sporting Club de Portugal, and it's something that like he's a really really good player. 80 million, I think, is too rich for most people's blood. I
Yeah.
don't think he's going to be an 80 million pound player, but I think if Villa want him and they can spend on him, I think we would be very happy with the return that we would see from him because he's a player that villains will be excited about, I think, because he has that bit more industry. I suppose, we've got people there like Coutinho came in, we expected Coutinho to be in this attacking force, but the legs are slowly but surely kind of beginning to dissipate. Um and he's injured now at the moment, obviously, as well. But maybe that bounce we thought we would get with Coutinho after his first 2 or 3 games, maybe that sustained bounce might be something we might get from a Pedro Gonçalves or something like that. But I certainly would be enamored to see him in the claret and blue next season because he's a big name on the continent, and I think he's primed for a move somewhere right now.
Yeah, it feels like it'd be a real statement signing for Villa, doesn't it?
Mm, yeah.
Is there anybody else that you can think of that you would like to see coming into Villa in the summer? Is there any name that sticks out to you that you think you've seen a link there, or is there anyone you're aware of? If Villa went for them, you'd be absolutely delighted about it this summer.
Um, I've been looking. I've been kind of doing my travails on and two areas in specific. We spoke about Matty Cash
Hmm.
and how Matty Cash has improved. I wouldn't be surprised to see another right back come in. I don't know who yet. If I had my choice if I had my choice of a right back, I would bring in somebody like Vanderson from Monaco, or I'd even have a crack if we were bringing in a backup right back. I'd have a crack of Jed Bogle from Sheffield United.
Hmm.
Really, very very decent defender and very good going forward. But um, I think in the attacking areas is where we're going to really be looking to make money or to spend our money. Um, and outside of Guendouzi, I think maybe a striker of the likes of maybe somebody like a Brian Broby from Ajax. I think he fits the Premier League pretty well. I think he's active. I think Unai Emery is going to want an active striker up there, like in Ollie Watkins. Brian Broby's having a very very good season. And I've got a piece coming out on him. He's just a player I like at the moment. Um, if we were able to if somehow we were able to park the Brinks truck up to Marcus Thuram's door and get him on a free transfer, I think that would be a knock it out of the park transfer. I just think the boat has sailed on that, but I think it's difficult to get a handle on what type of attacking player that Unai Emery wants. So it's
Hmm.
really been an exercise of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks really and what you can maybe make sense of based on what play we've seen from our players so far. But then again, is Unai Emery just cutting his cloth accordingly to what we have? Does he have different plans on how he wants to play next season? We're in a really really kind of truncated situation whereby it's going to be a super exciting transfer window. I think it really is going to be a super
Yeah.
exciting transfer window. We are going to be linked with a lot of names. I think as I said before, I think the media are trying to figure out how we're going to play, and they're going to they're going to figure out who we're going to be linked with, or and we're going to see a lot of crazy names. We're going to see a lot of names that will be actual goers. But for me, as I say, I think the striking department is definitely somewhere that we're going to look at, along with that attacking. We call it the attacking market, I suppose, really, with Pedro Gonçalves as well. The winning that we spoke about there previously.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Same. I can't help but think this summer, Christian Persson said it was going to be a very busy summer. I think recently, I can't help but think there's going to be quite a big overhaul. I mean, we've had quite a few of them recently, and it hasn't always worked out. But I
Mm.
think finally, with Unai Emery, there is a shared vision of where this might go. I mean, there's a few things I'm intrigued by. I'm intrigued to see what the future of Lange is as well, Johan Lange. We've seen a few links to
Yeah.
sporting directors. I mean,
Mm.
do you think Villa might go for another sporting director as well, or?
Yes, I think the longer this Antonio Cardon doesn't sign for Barcelona, the more likely at least he ends up in the Premier League.
Hmm.
Um, I think another sporting director. It may not mean Johan Lange is gone, but
Right.
it may mean that his influence is diminished even further. Um, I don't hold any animus towards Johan Lange. I think he's working within a structure. I think his structure is to create that recruitment department along with the likes of Rob McKenzie, along with the likes of Mark Harrison. They've brought in some really great young players
Yeah.
into the setup. I don't think Rome is ever going to be built in a day with Johan Lange. I know he's third year now that he's been here. This will be going into his third year. I don't hold as much animus as a lot of other people do. And I think that he could be kept on because I think there's a lot of goodwill towards him at the club.
Mm.
Now, whether he will be kept on in that direct working with Unai Emery role or whether he wants to not be in that role, like he may be offered another role at the club, whether he wants to accept it or not, I think is a completely different story because it may be seen as a demotion. But I think Unai Emery, there's just been too much smoke there in that one. He was talking about sounding out the Real Sociedad
Mm.
technical director, and then obviously the links to the former Betis director were there as well. I would be surprised if somebody else didn't come in there. I would be actually very surprised because I think the smoke around that fire is coming from somewhere, and it's coming from somewhere pretty definite. So yeah, I think we will hear news about that pretty sharpish towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and just before we kind of wrap up, you mentioned the youth team there, and I mean, Villa's approach to the youth football, I think, has been absolutely brilliant in the last few years. I've been really pleased to see so many young players coming through, not just locally, but players who've signed from around Europe and the world. But of all the youth players we have sort of out on loan, Robinham's at QPR, Cameron Archer and Jacob Ramsey seems to be doing really well at Middlesbrough. Do you think Kane Kessler-Hayden as well is another one, though, he's come back. Is there anyone who you think could potentially step up next season, or do you think it's still a bit too early?
I want to say yes. I want to say Tim Rogbingham is like really putting his hand up there to be. I just think he looks like a player that should be in and around his first team next season.
Yeah.
Um, Cameron Archer is doing really well in the championship level. Absolutely, like 6 goals in 12 games. Bit streaky in his scoring. Like he tends to score 2 goals in a game and then go and not score for 2 or 3 games. I don't really care about that. Um, Aaron Ramsey is putting his hand up for contention as well. But I think young Tim is the man. I think young Tim is the guy that will come back and be integrated because um I think that I think that we did speak about Guendouzi there, and I think that will we go back in for him in the summer is going to be a big question. And if we don't, maybe Tim is the guy to come in there and be the understudy in that position. He's shown that he's not as much of a direct number 6 since he's gone to QPR. He's been played in a a bit freer role, in a more traditional 8 role since he's gone to QPR as well. And he seems to have kind of broadened his horizons, I suppose, really. And Tim
Mhm.
is the one that I'm the most excited about at the moment because you look at Alex Scott that's playing with Bristol City at the moment. People are talking about him going for mega money. I think it's like 28 million or something like that. You look at him side by side statistically over the last 12 months with Tim or Igbenham, they aren't that dissimilar in their
Mm.
output, and it's an interesting one to talk about. I know obviously goals and assists will cloud a lot of people's judgments and stuff like that when you're looking at players, but and they're not a direct apples for apples comparison. But I just think there's something in young Tim that
Yeah.
we will see next season. I was fortunate enough to see his debut against Norwich last season. I thought he was really good, um, and I knew that he would go out on loan this season, and I think it was definitely the right decision. So yeah, I hope he comes back and kicks on next season because he could save us a pretty penny there in midfield as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. You're just hoping one of these youth players does save us that money, and you
Yeah.
can then spend it kind of elsewhere, I guess, in the team, or save it up for another time. And I
Hmm.
think you're right. Robinham's the one that I think is, I don't know. There's just something about him, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's a footballer, there's an intelligent player there, and with Kamara being injured now, you're seeing how McGinn's having to step into that role, but maybe a Robenham could be a more natural kind of CDM, and McGinn could be left to play a bit further forward. Though McGinn has done very well the last couple of games in Kamara's place. But you mentioned you were at the Norwich game. You live out in the west of Ireland. A place very close to my heart, of course. My grandma from Askeaton, Limerick. So and all my other grandparents from Ireland as well, actually. So yeah, I love Ireland, of course I do. But have you got any plans to get back over to Villa Park anytime soon? You're hoping to get in?
I'm over on the 8th of April for Forest game. Yeah, I'm over in Birmingham for that weekend for Easter weekend. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to tighten things down because we'll have another little set of feet coming then in early May. So
Nice.
yeah, 2 under 2 will severely curtail my ability to travel. Just from a time point of view. But I'm looking forward to getting over for the Forest game. I have an unbeaten. Well, sorry, I won't say I've got an unbeaten record. In recent times, I have an unbeaten record at Villa Park. So hopefully that Forest game will continue to be will continue to keep that record going. But I'm looking forward to it. I think the Forest game is going to be a good game to go to because obviously Steve Cooper's team, they're a bit Jekyll and Hyde this season, but they play good football and there's some good players that they have there, like Bradley Johnson and Brennan Johnson, sorry, should I say, and a couple of more of the guys that they have there. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to look forward to it. Yeah.
Lovely stuff. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people seeing you around. Very happy to see you as well. That winning streak, similar to my girlfriend, actually. She's been to 3 games, a playoff final, of course. We went together and Villa won that. And then she went to the Brighton game where we won Matt Target last kick of the game. So she's seen Villa win at Wembley. She's seen Villa win with the last kick of the game. And then she went to the Manchester United 3-1. So I said, you've seen Villa beat Man United at home after 27 years. So maybe you should just go to every single game and we'll end up as like Arsenal's Invincibles or something.
Anytime we need to break a streak, just bring her along. That's what you need to do.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, no, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you, and it always is. I absolutely love listening to your thoughts about Villa. I love listening to your podcast for the love of Paul McGrath.
Thank you.
Where, for those who don't know, I'm sure most people watching this and listening to it do, but, for anyone who hasn't come across you, where can we find you online and listen to your stuff?
Yeah, so you find me on Twitter. Twitter is where I'm most active, at Love McGrath Pod, for however long Twitter is going to be around for. I'm active there. And and then on YouTube, any audio podcast streaming service, you'll find us there. Thankfully, we're the only podcast, I think, that has Paul McGrath in the name. So it's very easy. If you just type in Paul McGrath, you'll probably find us in YouTube or wherever else. But as I say, you find us YouTube, any of the audio podcasts there.
Yeah, my girlfriend being Australian, she's big into cricket, so she was like, maybe she'll form her own cricket podcast called For the Love of Glenn McGrath.
Yeah.